Druid is the strongest class in the game, is it not? Well, it does have the most amount of builds, and going into World Tier 4, everybody's playing Werewolf, but Werewolf is not the only World Tier 4 build, because Werewolf is not as beefy, and you like a bear, I like a bear, so get ready to destroy with Werebear Druid. Hop it into World Tier 4, actually do some Nightmare Keys above 20, and start to level to 70, 80, I don't know how far you can take the build. I am still leveling right now, but it does work, you do survive, and you do a lot of damage. Let's see how that actually works. The build will probably be fairly similar to either what you already know or what you might have found online, although I did tweak it a little bit since I was dying a lot. So, first of all, in terms of the skills, Earth Spike and Pulverize will be your generator and consumer. Obviously, Pulverize will be your biggest damage sink. Debilitating Roar will be your Werebear defensive. Grizzly will be your cooldown, your big ultimate. Trample can get you out of sticky situations through unstoppable mechanics and deal some damage as well, and also stun enemies if you position it properly. Earthen Bulwark will be your other defensive, very good, but it is an earth skill. How does this have to do with Werebear? We'll get into that. And of course, there are a lot of passives to go through, and obviously I'm not going to go through all of them. There's quite a few, you can see them on the screen. You'll want your DPS passives right at the top and get a little bit of a crit to close enemies and some damage reduction in Werebear. Don't forget more defensives because you are kind of slightly squishy, so you will need Ancestral Fortitude and Vigilance. And since we're about to do a Werebear Earth build, obviously you'll be taking all of the Earth passive, maybe with only 1 point into Safeguard, and of course take all of the magic damage from Earth and Storm just above the ultimates, while taking the Earthen Might key passive, since this is how everything is going to come together with a lot of resets and a lot of spirit and a lot of damage, a lot of crit. In terms of the boons that you will be using, from the Deer you will be taking Wariness, the damage reduction from Elite. The Eagle will give you Avian Wrath, which will give you 30% critical strike damage, giga damage increase. Wolf will have Calamity, extending the duration of your ultimate skills by 25%, since Grizzly is going to be where you'll be doing a lot of your damage, if not all of it. And Snake will be your committed boon, and you'll be taking Masochistic so that your crits can also heal you, and Calm Before the Storm, giving you a lucky hit when nature magic skills hits have a 10% chance to reduce the cooldown of your ultimate skill by 2 seconds, giving you more Grizzly uptime, which is how this build plays, but we'll get into that as well. In terms of your Paragon, since the build does focus on you actually leveling and not being at level 100, you don't really need a lot of Paragon points or a big Paragon progression. Obviously, you'll be starting with your starter Paragon Board, and the glyph that you'll be using in your starter Paragon Board will be the Werebear glyph. You can start putting points all the way to the right to get Prime, giving you some damage and max health, plus you do have some decent magic nodes, and then you'll be pathing up towards the glyph, where you'll be socketing in Werebear, and of course you'll be purchasing all of the willpower nodes in range, considering that it's likely not going to be level 15 yet. So until it extends more, you'll need all of the willpower nodes to actually get it, because it does give you 10% damage reduction. You can postpone getting all the willpowers and continuously progress to the next board, since the damage reduction is not that necessary early on into World Tier 3, but once you get into World Tier 4, you will need the 10% damage reduction. Additionally, on the left-hand side to the bottom, you will be getting the Tenacity rare node for more armor max life. It does actually help pushing into the initial World Tier 4 dungeons. And after you're done with this, you'll be pathing to Impel and moving out of the starter board into the next board, which is going to be Survival Instinct. This might not give you the most amount of damage, and here you can take some of your own liberties. However, without this board, I found myself constantly dying in Nightmare Dungeons. Survival Instincts is what gave me enough tankiness. And to properly path to it, you will attach it and rotate it 3 times until it looks like this. You'll put your first point and go towards the right side where you have Bulwark, because once again, the damage reduction is going to be key. And after that, you'll be pathing towards the actual legendary node, Survival Instincts, which is going to be good, although probably not where the most amount of your focus should be on this board. That's going to keep you alive. It's good damage, don't get me wrong, but you will want the tankiness nodes as well. Once you get Survival Instincts, you'll be pathing to the left to get Spearhead as well, because there's a bunch more armor nodes. And here you can sink more points into the blue magic nodes, as many as you need to get more damage and also more armor. Once you have Spearhead, path upwards towards your Glyph. You'll be getting Grizzly, the rare node, and all of the blue nodes around it, excepting the Intelligence node, to the bottom. And once you get your Glyph, you'll be putting Exploit in. Ideally, you would like Exploit to be 15, otherwise you would have to waste a lot of points to activate its additional bonus, which is really what you're interested in. So Exploit will be the first Glyph that we recommend you level, because increasing the range at which it covers on the Paragon board will make it more accessible for you to get the necessary dexterity without actually investing too many points into useless nodes, because around the Exploit Glyph, you will want to take the dexterity nodes and move towards the right rare node, Battle Worn Hide, get all the blue nodes and get the dexterity blue node there as well. And optional, although I did find a good use of points here, you can path upwards towards Ursine and get all of the extra Werebear skill damage. Don't stress too much about the overpower damage, it's not that necessary. This is optional, you don't have to do this now. Instead, what you can do is path towards the right-hand side so you can get out of this board and move into the next one. And from here, you're probably going to be around level 70 if you've been doing your Renown. So this is already decent amount into Nightmare. If you still want to progress from here on out, this is up to you, and it's very interchangeable, but I will give you what I think should be best to take in the natural progression of Werebear, and this is Ancestral Guidance. Once you attach the Ancestral Guidance board, rotate it 3 times so that the legendary node is around the top, and then you will, well, path towards the legendary node, and then go back to the Recuperate node. This is just a free rare node. It's not that important, but you will want to path towards Spiritual Power, increasing your core skill damage and basic skill damage, mostly core skill damage. But the reason you're going this way is because you will want to get the Glyph, and this is just like free damage. It's just raw base damage, but it's probably the best one that you will be getting with your points. And then you'll path towards the Glyph and you'll put Undaunted in this Glyph, giving you a bonus that for every 5 intelligent purchase within range, you deal 10% increased damage while fortified, which by this point, fortified is already something that you'll have almost all of the time on yourself. And of course, you'll want to purchase all of the intelligence nodes that you can get here to maximize this as well. I would recommend you also path towards Harmony. Since you'll be getting the blue intelligence nodes, might as well put another point here for 14% more skill power damage. Also, of course, you can get 14% more if you have the total amount of intelligence already, and you probably would by now, plus 10 additional willpower, which is, you know, neither here nor there. Once you get this, this is it. This is all you do in the Ancestral Guidance board. Then you move back into Survival Instincts. If you didn't path when I mentioned to Ursine, you can path to Ursine now and try to exit out of the board on the right-hand side and attach the Thunderstruck board. Once you attach this one, you don't really need to rotate it. The most important part probably out of this, although it's still something that we need to calculate a little bit more, is to go down towards the rare nodes Tempest, and you want to pick up all the crit strike damage and vulnerable damage nodes. Those are probably the single most important part of this entire board for you, because they just scale really well as stats. And then you will want to exit the board through the bottom part and then attach Earthen Devastation, and this one also is something that you don't need to rotate. If you attach it in this way, you will path towards the right-hand side to the Oppress node. That will give you more damage to crowd control enemies. You'll obviously want to take all the magic nodes because it just gives you really nice scaling damage. And you'll path towards the middle, towards the Glyph, where you will put Spirit. This is actually a pretty good Glyph, and you will want this. Some builds actually advise people to take this sooner, but I think this is pretty good in and of itself. You'll need the Dexterity nodes, of course, to scale it up, and then move towards the left-hand side, towards Earthen Power, giving you damage with Earth spells, of course, crit strike damage with Earth skills, which is really good to scale, and then you'll try to move towards the legendary node, Earthen Devastation. This is, of course, very interchangeable with what you want to do and to accomplish in the game. past the second board, you should be fairly decent enough into Nightmare, and you will adjust accordingly, whether you need more damage, whether you need more tankiness, all up to you. But what does make the build what it is actually the aspects and uniques, and you probably know most of them. The most important aspect that you can get is the shockwave aspect that you'll be putting on your weapon, and actually also the earth sign horror aspect, which you can either put on the ring or the glove. The shockwave aspect makes Pulverize launch a shockwave as well that will end up doing way more damage than anything else, and your earth sign horror will make Pulverize an earth skill and deal more earth damage, which is really good. Definitely synergizing with all of your earth passives. And the next aspects are from the most important to the least important, and if you want to replace or if you don't have some of them, try to replace them from the end of this list instead of the ones at the top, which are a little bit more irreplaceable. One of which is the Rampaging Werebeast, where it increases your Grizzly duration, and for every crit you launch, it increases your crit damage by 10%. This is what actually makes you scale into killing a large packs of elites in high nightmare dungeons, or at least mid nightmare dungeons going into world tier 4. The next one that you'll probably be wanting is the aspect of the umbral that will give you resource when crowd controlling, either put it on the rings or the gloves, similar to the Werebeast, and it will synergize really well with your spirit expenditure. Aspect of retaliation is another really good damage source that will make your core skills do more damage while you are fortified. Put this on your amulet and you'll be good to go. Your defensive one will be Disobedience, and you'll be putting it on your pants. One would argue that you probably cannot play World Tier 4 without this. It's up to you. I would find it very hard to replace any of these. And the last one would be Aspect of the Quicksand, which you'll most likely put it on your boots. Gambling Boots also gives you this aspect, or at least it did for me quite often, and is going to be really good to keep constant slow on all of your enemies. As for the uniques, there's two, but really one that's mandatory, and that is Vasily Sprayer, making your earth skills also be Werebear skills, meaning that earth skills will scale with your Werebear skills, and earth skills can be used in Grizzly, making Earth Spike usable during Grizzly, and Earthen Bulwark also usable during Grizzly, not to mention it scales with all the Werebear damage that you'll be getting. Insatiable Fury is your second unique, which is going to be your chest, the first one being your headpiece, and it will give you permanent Werebear uptime, and all of your Werebear skills will get +2. This is a big increase in your damage. It's not necessarily mandatory, but it definitely helps, and you will definitely feel the difference while using it. In terms of the stats, since this is not a late game, end game build, I will tell you some of the more important stats that you can be focusing on, since you probably don't want to enchant too much mid-game level gear, since you're gonna replace it anyway, and unless it rolls with perfect stats, then you're probably not gonna want to invest too much into it anyway. In terms of damage, some of the most important stats that you can be aiming for is crit chance first and crit damage second. I particularly like to get crit chance first, since crit damage is also funneled a lot by Grizzly, and all of the crit damage from your Grizzly aspect is going to matter if you have crit chance. If you don't crit a lot, then the value of the aspect drops as well, so I would value crit chance over crit damage. After these two take vulnerable damage, which obviously is very good and scales well, especially once you have your exploit rune leveled up with all of the proper requirements to apply constant vulnerable. And after this, I would actually get willpower. This is fairly easy to come by. You don't have to enchant a lot for it, and you'll more likely get willpower than anything else on your gear. So this is fairly easy to keep on your gear, but obviously you can roll this to something other like a crit if you don't have it. Or lastly, you can also aim for critical effects with earth skills, which are obviously the next best thing. In terms of tankiness, some of the more important ones, although not necessarily in this order, total armor and armor in Werebear are going to be really good for you to get. And of course, flat damage reduction applies to all situations, which is always ideal. But you can also get damage reduction while fortified, since you will be fortified a lot of the time, and damage reduction from close enemies, since those are likely the ones that are probably going to kill you. Some other stats to be looking for if you have the luxury to do so. Spirit cost reduction is really good, cooldown reduction is really good. Stats, generic stats, but likely intelligence and dexterity are going to be really good, just enough for you to meet the requirements for your rare nodes. I wouldn't want to invest more into these. In any case, if you have enough of intelligence or dexterity from whatever other means, don't roll for them. And lastly, although not necessarily weak, ranks of Pulverize, which you're only really gonna find on the gloves, are also really good sources of damage, but the chances of you getting ranks of Pulverize is fairly high. Half of the gloves seem to drop with ranks of Pulverize, so it's not something that you'll usually look out for since you'll probably get it anyway. In terms of gems, put emeralds in your weapons to do more damage while enemies are vulnerable, especially once your exploit glyph is ready, and your armor will be filled with sapphires to give you more damage reduction while fortified. I've tested these. Maximum life does not seem to work mid-game. It doesn't give me enough defensive to survive, while sapphires are clearly superior. And your jewelry will, of course, have skulls to give you the most amount of armor. In terms of playstyle, this is a very simple build to play. You obviously want to generate spirit with Earthen Spike and consume it with Pulverize. One key thing is when you fight, try to position yourself so that your Pulverized Shockwave hits as many minions as possible, and keep in mind that Pulverized Shockwave, the end of it usually ends up doing a lot of damage, so even if they're far away, you're usually better off kiting mobs and not getting hit, and you'll still hit the ones at range and deal a lot of damage. The most important ability that you have outside of Pulverize is Grizzly. You want to use this every time it is up because you do have cooldown reduction for Grizzly and resets as well, and ideally you want to pop it once you're full on spirit so you can immediately start pulverizing and building up those crits. Not to mention keep your eyes peeled for any spirit resets because you do have the Earthen Might key passive that's going to give you resets on your full bar of spirit, and use Debilitating Shout, Trample, and Earthen Bulwark for defensive purposes. You can use them to reposition, to avoid being surrounded or anything like that, but never have them all on cooldown unless you're comfortable with the position that you're in, since you might end up being crowd controlled or frozen or stunned or anything like that, and you won't have a tool to get out of your sticky situation. And this is what worked for me getting into World Tier 4, slapping those nightmare dungeons, surviving, not dying almost at all, surprisingly tanky if you don't just actually deliberately stand in all the stuff, although I did face tank some bosses which seemed to be fine, but I was also doing a lot of damage. Sometimes it takes a little bit to ramp up. Maybe it's not the best druid build. I like Werebear and I don't really care. I'm gonna make this work, and I've tweaked and tweaked and tweaked until I could actually clear nightmare dungeons, starting with level 65, 66 when I've unlocked World Tier 4, and it seems to be doing really well so far. We'll see how that scales into late game. More on that in the future. What changes do you make for your Werebear builds? Let me know down in the comment section below. I would be curious to know what people play with their Werebears, because I'm a big bear fan. Thank you for watching the video. See you next time. Bye-bye.